I look at myself as a tuning fork. And so I'm one end of the tuning fork, the client's the other. And the room also has an impact on that. So it starts there, is understanding how it makes me feel. So that when I bring that into the session, I can get a feel for that as it's happening. I can empathize with the client experience. I can get out of my own, put myself in the client's experience as best as possible. I can never fully know what's going on, but I do know that prior to the medicine, this is how it made me feel. These are the emotions it brought up. These are the memories it brought up, the visuals that I had. And then as the client is journeying, I'm watching their reactions, and their reactions are is their tuning fork, and they're vibrating, which is causing a vibration in me. As I can see the reaction happening to them, it's happening to me, and I'm pairing that with my understanding of what the piece of music can do.
Welcome to The Vital Point, where we explore the practices that bring us back to our bodies, our breath, and our being. If you've been following the show, you know we're crafting a space for not just insight, but integration, turning inwards to connect with your own inner wisdom as you travel the path of integration. My guest on today's show is Matt Xavier, a professional ambient techno DJ, Gestalt experiential counselor, psychedelic assisted therapist, and author of The Psychedelic DJ, a practical guide to therapeutic music curation and psilocybin-assisted therapy. With over 30 years of experience DJing and 15 years experience in clinical mental health, Matt bridges underground electronic music with therapeutic practice. A pioneer of New York's early psychedelic trance scene, his sound blends hypnotic house, deep techno, and cinematic ambient to create immersive, emotionally resonant journeys. His work in therapeutic DJing uses music as co-therapist in psilocybin-assisted therapy, inviting listeners inward with carefully curated sound designed to support healing and transformation. And this is one that I have been really waiting to share with you. I love this book that Matt wrote. I'm a big fan of it, and I was really excited that I got to geek out really about music with him. So let me just give you some context. Why are we talking about clubs and therapy in the same breath in the beginning of this conversation? Well, for me, and I was glad that I was able to find some rapport with Matt on this, there is a huge overlap between the rave culture and the experience that one can have in the right club with the right DJ and the psychedelic experience. In fact, for many people, the rave could be their introduction to psychedelics. And while it's not necessarily the same as a therapeutic experience, it is the way that people first encounter psychedelics oftentimes. You know, the rave is a space in which expanded states of consciousness can be explored. There's a communal aspect, there's movement, there's dance, as well as an acceptance, for the most part, of psychedelics. And this is something that we've talked about before on the show with Taylor Bratches, with Eric Sinknecht, and Solo. To me, there's a huge overlap in those experiences. And as I explained, not just raves in general or the current mainstream EDM, but a particular type of underground party that I frequented a lot when I was younger and still enjoy occasionally, once or twice a year to go. It's a very spiritual experience for me. Now, there's probably a few, technical terms that would be helpful to explain. One of them is harmonic mixing, which is a style of mixing records or mixing songs where the songs are mixed in the same key or a similar key, which makes the transition incredibly smooth. And as Matt mentions, allows the listener and the participant to go deeper into the experience, especially when they're in a therapeutic DJing session, because the music isn't changing moods or emotions in the same way that it might if you were just playing random music. Another term that Matt uses is psychedelic soundtracking, which is what he describes as part of his therapeutic DJing process, that he is creating a DJ experience for one participant and tailoring that to support their psychedelic work as closely as he can, really holding the container and supporting their journey with the music that he's playing. I think there's a lot of nuance in this conversation once you get past the music geeking between me and Matt. There's a discussion of Matt's past, how he went from DJing to counseling and then into psychedelic work. The challenge of explaining DJing in a therapeutic context. There's people that just don't quite understand what we're doing here. And so that was one reason that I found it important to share Matt's book and his work on the podcast, because this is, to me, very similar to what I'm doing in the breathwork space, or when I'm holding space for people as well. I may not be live DJing the way that Matt is, although I would love to step into that world. But the music that I'm playing for my clients is very curated to support the work in expanded states that they're doing. So this book was incredibly informative to me and inspirational, and I hope that you find it as well. Um, we also talk about set and setting and how that overlaps with DJing in raves, as well as the set and setting of bringing this music and this context into psychedelic therapy work. As well as the importance of curating the music and good music, and how that affects people's experience. Really, one of the most interesting things that we get into is how the sound is the setting. If you're familiar with psychedelics, you've probably heard these terms, set and setting. Set being the mindset, the internal experience that we're entering the space in, and setting being the external, and how music creates that setting. We also get into Matt's book about cultivating music versus therapeutic DJing, how one might start out if they were interested in this process, and that Matt's book is designed to make this process accessible, not overwhelming someone with all the things that they might have to do to become a DJ. And that one doesn't even really have to DJ in the same way. There's a different mindset, there's a different set of things that one might be thinking about and considering doing therapeutic work versus what we commonly think of as DJing. Another big theme in this conversation is attunement. That by entering into the space with the right intention and the right care and the right music, that one is really training themselves to be in tune with the energy in the space of the client, and that almost acting as like a tuning fork for supporting them with music. I wanted to get into something that is very fascinating to me, which is the stylistic differences between holotropic breathwork and psychedelic therapy sessions, and how one might change or alter the music in those states. We get into a discussion about ethics and the importance of training and importance of doing your own work, as well as the value in not trying to take as much medicine as you can, the importance of proper dosage, and when the dosage is appropriate, how that benefits going deeper, doing shadow work, doing real transformational work that one can integrate rather than just trying to blast off and be out of the body or really out of the realm of consciousness. Before we get into the conversation, I want to invite you to join the private community over on School. It's a space to go deeper into these conversations around breathwork, inner exploration, and learning to trust your inner intelligence and your direct experience. If you're looking to connect with others who are practicing, integrating, and living this work, come join us. You can find the link in the show notes or go to school.com/Blue Magic Alchemy. We are going to dive right into the conversation now.
I was on a walk yesterday with my partner, and I was telling her about how excited I was to talk to you. And I was like, when your book came out, I was like, I got to get this guy on the podcast. And you were super busy, and it was like right around psychedelic science. And I totally understood, like, man, this guy has got to be like super swamped. Um, just be patient. But I was like, I'm going to buy this book regardless of whether he ever gets back to me or not, because this book is like everything that I already am doing or want to do. And
Yeah.
um so yeah, like I was just super excited that, that we finally were able to make it happen. And I'm really happy for you and your success, that the book has been obviously so well received.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate that. It's been quite a ride, really. It's totally unexpected. I went from doing been DJing for 30 years, but then became a counselor, threw myself at that for 10 years, and then burned out, switched into this. And since I've been doing this, I've just been focused on this work primarily. That's it. That and rest and relaxation to, balance this
Mm.
type of work. But along the way, that book just kept knocking. Really, from the first moment that, like, I'd say from the first year of doing the work, when my colleagues would say, "Yeah, I think you're doing something that's unique, and you have these, careers that have come together." And yeah, I took that, I didn't even see that really. And they said, you should probably teach this or write something about it. And that was where the first notes began. I would go out on the hikes up here in Topanga, where I am right now, at least, and um, and I would just start writing notes on different topics. The hardest one, interestingly enough, was DJing, which is the one I've been doing the longest. It was something I just do so naturally and have since I was, young, and I can explain it at a dinner table
Hmm.
to friends, but to sit down and specifically try to explain it really was kind of strange. There was a lot of resistance around it because it's something so natural and so artistic. And yeah, I just had to figure out how to put it into words, and that took some time. I had to like riff on things while I'm hiking in the, in the wilderness, and some of that would bounce off of how do I explain Gestalt therapy, how do I explain psychedelics,
Mm.
and then how do I explain DJing, and I would just jump back and forth between these topics, and I'd have little blurbs and thoughts that would pop out, and I would get them going.
Do you think that part of that challenge in explaining the DJing has to do with like the change in the set and setting between the nightclub, the rave, and then going in and translating that into the therapeutic experience?
Yeah, that's fascinating. I think first it was to just break down the technical aspect of it. I can kind of explain it by words, but to sit down and actually sit there and type
Mm.
is very different than explaining it in free form. Talk to text was actually helpful. At certain points, I would just be able to kind of just speak a bunch of stuff out and then go back and edit what I spoke. And so I found that to be easier. To get into the process of breaking down the difference between the dance floor and the session, yeah, that took some time as well. That I wasn't even the first one to identify that I was doing that. My wife was.
Mm.
I was just showing up in sessions. I was so heavily involved in Gestalt therapy and addiction treatment that that's really what my primary focus was at the time. And DJing had become very much just a secondary hobby that I had retired from officially like a year earlier. And then when I sat down and started doing the sessions with my wife, um, she was the first one to say, she's like, you are DJing again, but you're DJing for one person. And I just was kind of looking at it, was very second nature for me to set the speakers up the way that I did and to just start playing music. I wasn't really sitting there thinking about it in that capacity. And once she said the audience of one, then I started to really see that the inner and outer setting of the person, their landscape, really is the dance is in a sense the dance floor. You know, of course, there's many things I would do in a dance floor setting that I would never do in a session, and vice versa.
Right.
But it's still basically the same model, which is to understand the setting that we're going to go into, understand the crowd or the person, understand what they're bringing to the space, what they're expecting, and then being able to just adjust what within what I can do using the tools I do have to craft them a soundtrack that will be supportive to what they're there to do. And if they're there to dance, I want to try to create something that has a beautiful arc, a couple of different acts to it that brings you through an experience. And that to me describes what the psychedelic journey is and bringing music into a psychedelic therapy session is the clients coming in with expectations to hopefully address certain things. They want to have a really beautiful setting. They want to have the best music, just like a person in the nightclub would. And I go into that, taking it as serious, or to be honest, even more serious than I do with big gigs. Big gigs at this point are very second nature. I just kind of throw things into a playlist or record box, and I'll show up and just start to wing it. Psychedelic sessions are a little bit more refined in that I show up with a basic idea of what I think the client might want. What by empathizing with their experience, I'll jump in that and put myself in their shoes, craft something that I think are a couple of different options of directions. And then I just start. And from that point, I'm either going to just allow my earlier selections to kind of guide that, or as I'm going, I'll make adjustments based on new pieces of music that I have available, or just what the moment then tells me to do. And so that is very much what live DJing is.
Right.
The moment decides. That's if you're any good. If you're not, if you're just sticking to an actual, stuck playlist, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, artists do it all the time, bands do it all the time. But I think it leaves out the client or the customer from being able to contribute to the experience in some capacity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I do try to leave open. However, I do step into the spaces prepared to go in different directions and also prepared to be able to drop DJing completely um, and just focus primarily on the client. And I can do that either with the sets that I already have pre-selected. If I see that those selections are working and the client response is working there, I can follow that. And then if, just like this last session on Saturday, if I need to drop everything, I can switch to a long form track, or I can switch to one of my, just letting one of my playlists play out. And then I can just focus on the client, help them process whatever's emerging, take notes, and then get back to selecting music as it's happening once the setting allows for that. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Hmm.
There's a few questions or things that came
Sure.
up through that, but I also want to provide some more context to
Oh,
the
sure.
audience. And this is where I also have struggled to sort of explain my own love for rave culture and the dance music that I love, and how I try to take that spirit into healing work in expanded states of consciousness, whether that's breath work, psychedelics, or something else, right? And what came up for me as you were speaking was this a quote from a very famous DJ, David Guetta. And David Guetta was talking about how DJing today in, 2020s, whatever we're in now, there's like a split. There's people that entertain and there's artists that play music, right? And so I think that when the average person that's not as immersed in the world that we're talking about thinks about DJing, thinks about electronic music or electronic dance music or raving, they think more of this mainstream entertainment that it's become. Whereas I think I don't want to speak for you, but I'm pretty sure that I can. And I know for myself, we're coming from a much more like artistic, underground kind of space where the rave is almost, it can be a spiritual space. It can be a place for exploration, for taking drugs, for getting to know oneself, for community, and not this like huge multi-million dollar pyrotechnic production where it's about the DJ. Like the DJ is the band, the DJ is the entertainer. They are playing a set that doesn't change, or maybe even a pre-recorded set, where they're just kind of, some of it is the theatrics of it. The things that I love about dance music and the things that I try to take into my own work are the guys that you could put them in a room with like one light or no lights, and they would create like a spiritual fucking journey for you that would like change your life. And you would walk out of it going, oh my God, like what just happened? I just saw God. I was just dancing with God for the last however many hours. Right. And so like there's this disconnect, I think, when I start to talk about like, hey, like I go to these raves and this is like really important to my work, or I try to bring that spirit into what I'm doing. So just for the context, I think we're talking more about that latter kind of section when we're talking about the dance floor, right? Or if we're not, that's okay.
Yeah. That last bit that you said, I was thinking, yeah, that's what I do in sessions with clients.
Yeah.
Is that the lights are out. They are wearing those eye shades. They are deep in that experience, and I'm doing my absolute best to create something that will be absolutely life-changing for them. That will be something they can walk away and just say, wow. Now, I'd like to think that every DJ brings that to the dance floor when they're setting up and getting ready to go out. And many of the ones that I know do take it that serious. Unfortunately, DJing has just become overly accessible. The technology has made it unbelievably easy for people to jump into something that used to take work to actually learn. And as a result, we have people that are there to entertain, like you pointed out. There's people that are there strictly for attention and business, the influencer crowds.
Mhm.
And then there's the true artists that are there collecting music, hunting every single day, living it constantly, and not just preparing for their next set, but they're preparing for every moment of their lives where they're going to pair that music to. And they take it that serious. And blending music in that capacity is just like my friend who I'm staying with here. She's recently in it and she just can't get enough of it. She's just totally hooked on it. And she's a true artist and bringing the artistic intention to this. But unfortunately, the field of DJing publicly has become a really douchey experience. And you see a whole heck of a lot of it on Instagram,
Right.
where it's DJs that suck, who weren't around a few years ago, who are now just, playing the absolute cheesiest, biggest crap. And they're doing pre-recorded sets, and they're doing it all just to get this attention. And they're on Instagram with, all these followers, but they don't actually have skill sets. And it's flooded the field. But the field of psychedelic therapy is flooded too.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
this happens, right? Things get really accessible. Everybody thinks they can do it. They dive in, they throw themselves at it. You'll see a whole bunch of people that do it through truth. And then you'll see other people who are doing it for other reasons. And then, you have to wait for the system to kind of even out. And DJing's been around for many decades now. It's going to go through a series like it is now. And right now, it's currently going underground again. The major festival circuits are shutting down, like so many festivals are closing. And even I saw the Coachella lineup, and it got so far away from underground electronic music. This year, I went and looked at it. They went right back into their roots again, and they're actually hosting more underground sounds. And so I like that they're getting away from it. Currently focusing on smaller events, and really trying to bring people into a tighter community and getting away from this idea that more is better. And if you think about that, that's also, I then bring that down even more down into the one, and just doing
Right.
these psychedelic therapy sessions, which are similar and also very different.
Yeah, yeah. No, and I also just want to say, like I have nothing against going out and having a good time and partying. Like I've had great experiences doing that with like DJs that are more, let's say, party like sort of oriented. At the end of the day, like dancing is a party, whether it's kind of spiritual or not. It's just my own journey with what I appreciate, what I gravitate to, what speaks to me, and my spirit, and like the music that I love has always kind of trended in that direction. And I love finding that those kind of songs that I can then translate into other sets and settings, like what we're talking about, right? Like psychedelic
Yeah.
therapy or breath work.
Or
I've
driving through the mountains,
Oh yeah,
or
right.
going snowboarding,
Having
or going
a
for a drive, or having
Yeah.
family over. You have to have music for all different things. And that's what I'm doing constantly, is collecting music for not just that, but also for these stages and these moments in psychedelic therapy with different medicines, different clients, groups. There's all different types of material. It's a constant hunt to do DJing. And so for the people that don't understand it, I invite them to try to understand that there's an aspect to it, like all art, that is very serious and is worth investigation. To people who are just closed minded to it, and they just look at it and they chalk it off as just kind of like just a waste of time, or something they're just not into, it's not for them. However, when you sit in a psychedelic therapy session, it might not be for you, but someone's going to play music for you most likely. And you better
Mm,
hope that they understand what music is and how to
mhm.
craft that. Because the crappiest thing you can have happen is to throw yourself at something so important, and then to have somebody put a less than desirable soundtrack on at one of the most sensitive and profound moments in your life.
Music has when we talk about these sort of pillars of set and setting, which are so important to the psychedelic experience, music has a huge impact on the setting, and it has the capacity to affect your set, right? It can literally change the way that you're feeling. It can support going into deeper emotions, deeper material. Um, it can take you to places and unlock some doors that maybe would be more challenging to get to without it.
Yeah, well, that's how we use it in films. We're actually using that tool to instigate a particular feeling or a memory to get everybody on the same kind of plane. It's a way of empathizing with the crowd, but also getting the crowd to empathize with what's going on the screen. It's such a powerful tool for being able to create connection and for fueling and moving scenes along. So it does very much change the setting. I mean, I've said this in other interviews. The sound is setting, which was one of the book names I had considered. But sound is setting, right? Sound, speakers and instruments move air in the room, and the air in the room is the setting. And if that setting smells bad, that's going to impact your experience. If it sounds bad, that's going to impact your experience. Sound is so unbelievably important. This is why we hold musicians up so high in society, is that it's just such a reverent and spiritual experience. And raving is too, going out into these environments and throwing yourself at a community and connecting with people without talking, and catching eyes of people on a dance floor and being completely hypnotized by music for hours on end, and then using psychedelics or not, using breath work and other things in these types of experiences to bring you to a higher state of being. All these things are just driven by music. Music is one of the first things that they go after when they want to tear down a society. They'll ban music because music's that powerful. This has gone on for millennia. Pieces of music that are never allowed to be played again because what do they bring up? They bring up feelings of freedom and feelings of resistance and feelings of joy and anger and memories and songs that are telling stories that are powerful. And when you attach that story to music, it makes it even that much more incredible. And so we're doing that for these, for these clients. We're playing music and helping them have these experiences that, the music is just bringing these memories to the surface for them, maybe for the first time ever.
Mm.
And it's doing it in conjunction with the medicine, which is amplifying the effect of the music. And it's just such an incredibly powerful thing for a client to allow someone to do for them, and for us and our responsibility to bring to this.
I love that. Yeah, no,
Yeah, the whole point of this is really, like, I'm realizing as I'm watching other interviews too, is that DJing right now is in a big change. There's a lot of arguments going on podcasts about what it is.
mm,
And my wife and I were sitting and looking at these interviews that we just saw, and I thought, this is what this book is doing, is that it's in a sense redefining what DJing is and what it has always been. And I hope that that this book contributes in that capacity to give DJs even an idea that there's something more you can do with DJing other than chasing followers on Instagram,
mm.
other than just collecting music and hoping you're going to get that one gig at the bar where you get to play once or twice a year. You can go and do these things and really set and create settings for yourself and for others. And I hope this book, gives people that capacity. From what I'm hearing, it does. So,
Yeah, no, I really love the book. I think it's definitely one of my favorite books that I've read this year. And yeah, like there's two sort of main parts that the book is very, it goes into a lot of material, but there's, the way that I sort of read it, there's two main kind of branches that it talks about. One is this cultivation and how to cultivate music, how to put together, like how you would put together music for the psychedelic setting. And then the actual, like, if you want to take it that extra step and play music and be basically like a psychedelic DJ, you know, have a audience of one, so to speak, like your wife mentioned, how you would do that as well. And I think both of those are fantastic for me personally. And we already talked about this before when we talked. I was like, I wanted more of the, like, the nerdy technical stuff, because so much of what you talk about in the book is already things that I do. And so, like, yes, I was like so excited that there was a book like this. Also, I was like, oh wow, other people are doing this. This is really, really cool. And, um, just to be completely transparent, like, you've obviously been doing it a lot longer than I have. You have a book about it. There's a protocol. It's developed. So I personally love those moments where something that's in my head or something that I'm trying to figure out, how do I expand this? How do I, like, scale it up or do more of it? Because I really love this, and I want more of it in my life. And then it, like, appears outside of me. And then I'm like, oh, yes, this is great.
mhm.
I had the same experience when I started doing breath work. Uh, I was taking I was DJing for myself. I was like laying on my bed, and I had
Yeah.
like a YouTube video of like Wim Hof, and then I was putting music that I was hearing in ayahuasca ceremonies or my mushroom journeys, and sequencing it in a way that it would align to the breath work. And I'm just in my room by myself, not knowing that other people do this, or that, like, Stanislav Grof has this huge legacy of lineage of teaching people how to do stuff like that. And so when I first went to a breathwork experience, albeit the first one online, and I was hearing it and I was like, oh my God, this is everything that I want to do.
Yeah.
It was like,
Right.
cool, I gotta do this more. I gotta
Yeah.
learn how to do this. So your book was one of those moments where it's enriched what I'm already doing. Like, for
Yeah.
instance, earlier, a couple months ago, someone reached out to me and they were like, and we can talk about how you feel about this.
Uh-huh.
But they were like, hey, I need a playlist for working with psilocybin with clients. And I'm like, well, I have some feelings about that, because I feel like with psilocybin, you need to be able to shift gears and like do different things and not be tied to a set playlist the way that you can with ketamine or with breath work. But if this is what you need and you want to pay me for it, I'm happy to do that. So your book was, kind of on the desk with me as I was doing that, because I'm like, I know what to do in the moment. I've had this experience live, but like, putting together a playlist is a little bit different for this. So, some of those things in there, like the harmonic mixing and, some of the other tips that you give were really invaluable. And I would come back to it, or I would like go, okay, I'm going to listen to this song and like see how this fits in with what I'm already doing. And so I've found the book to be very helpful and as well as educational. So thank you.
Well, thanks so much, man. I appreciate that you do enjoy it. It was written primarily when I had multiple audiences at the beginning, and then as it was going, it kind of was just it honed in on facilitators, psychedelic therapists, and journeyers who are looking to set music for themselves or for their friends. And I didn't want to get too lost in the DJing stuff because even now, just with the name of the book and what DJing is and isn't, it's already been a little contentious. Bill Richards in a recent interview, it said, "Don't DJ in sessions," and and I don't think he understands what DJing is for him to say that. But, there's to get into the granular of it. I had my colleague even read the book early on, the very first draft. And she said, wow, it's just so, I don't know if I could do all this stuff. And she was even overwhelmed with a lot of it. And that just helped remind me of the importance of keeping it simple,
Mm,
that the book didn't need to cover every single direction. It
yeah.
was already going to be comprehensive enough that I was going to take people through my whole protocol as best as I could explain it and include music and DJing in there. To then go off on tangents about what beat matching is and isn't, and how to do it, and where to start, and which bars, and how many measures, and then, how to use effects and which effects and for what reasons and why, would have lost a lot of the readers along the way, because it's
100%.
already a little bit challenging for folks who don't even know the names of the artists that they listen to,
Mm,
who are now listening to AI music and have no clue that they're listening to it. People that are not connected to music in any capacity or know how to find music. And now they're stuck doing psychedelic therapy. They love it, they want to do it, but then the music component comes in and they feel so totally overwhelmed. The
absolutely.
idea was to try to create something that gave, I do say early on, I think in the introduction towards the end, is like, don't do what I'm doing. You can't do what I'm doing. It's going to take time, like playing an instrument. I'm not going to
Right.
step into a session and try to play a guitar. It's going to come out like crap. If you're just starting off, yeah, definitely create playlists.
Right.
That's where therapeutic DJing, which is the overarching umbrella concept in there, which is a combination of therapeutic music curation and psychedelic soundtracking. The curation portion is really looking at the client, understanding them, taking a look at their screening, getting a good feel for them in the prep sessions, and then taking a look at the medicine, their experience, taking all these things into account. And then when you sit down and you're going through your track selection, you're kind of pulling things in. And that can either be comprised of previously made playlists or sections of playlists that and putting those into the playlist, and then grabbing another section and another, and understanding that there's going to be that arc and trying your best to kind of create something that will fit within that. And then when you step into the space, you'll be able to learn as the session's moving, whether your selections that you thought of the night before or the week before, when, as you're creating them, land in the session, which is what all DJs go through, right? Even if you're not a DJ, if you never even buy my book and you're just using these playlists off Spotify and you just grab one and hit play, you're going to notice as you're paying attention that you're DJing because you're going, wow, that track doesn't seem to work right now, but oh well, I can't change it. And so you're going to be doing that anyway. You're going to be watching how these selections work. So I think being involved with that and getting into that's going to be able to help you craft and create better playlists, being loose enough to allow that to happen, but not putting the pressure on yourself to have to perform until you feel comfortable enough to start to make small changes.
Yeah.
And that's where the soundtracking comes in. I hopefully explain that as best as I can. Some people get it. Some people are lost by it because it's a bit technical for some folks. Whereas for you, you're like, I'm already doing this, so it just validates you.
Right.
And I love that. You know, my musician art. I have a couple of musicians using the book for their private practices, and they're like, I know a lot of this stuff already, but you put it into different words. I have other people who say, I've been thinking this forever, and I've never written it down. And then I've got DJs who are like, I know what you're doing, you know,
Yeah.
and they're running into this now, saying this book totally gives me permission to go and do this more deeply. And so it's, you know, it's appealing to different people.
Yeah. And I love that you mentioned that in the book of like, hey, here's some things that you can do at a beginner level. And then here's some things at an intermediate level. And here's like kind of the advanced. And don't try to bite it all off at once. Just like you're saying, this is an art and it is like playing an instrument and it takes time to develop as an artist. Like you don't want to just be worrying about trying to do all this stuff while you have a client that's under the influence of powerful psychedelic medicine, right? So one little thing, even if it's like 1% more that you're doing to enrich their experience, and especially with that intention that you're bringing in of like healing, of helping and to support them, that's only going to help you to grow, I think, as a practitioner yourself.
Yeah. I guess one thing I can jokingly say is don't DJ in sessions
Uh-huh.
to a lot of people, which is going to sound really interesting because that's, you know, the whole book is talking about doing that. But don't run in there and try to be a DJ,
Right.
you know, and get in there and be all technical and try to overdo those things, you know. Honestly, take your time. I mean, if you don't understand how to play an instrument, don't just jump up in front of a crowd and start playing, you know. You have to
Yeah.
actually practice and learn. However, it's good to step into spaces from time to time and push your edges.
Mm.
I think the type of DJing I'm talking about is that. Don't get into the technical DJing, the nightclub DJing, the entertaining DJing, as you said earlier,
Right.
but instead use the mentality of DJing. And
Absolutely.
that gets down to being addicted to music, loving it so much that you can't get enough, that you're constantly chasing it and looking for the next greatest piece to add to your collection because that one time that's going to come in handy. And that one time can be a client session or when you're just by yourself and you play that one piece of music that makes the day feel better. Live with that mentality. Collect music, hunt it down, be a detective. It's such an easy thing to have a relationship with. It is it's food for the soul. It is water for me. And that's DJing. DJing isn't just about turntables and mixing. It's really about hunting music and being in love with it and knowing it so deeply that it knows you too. And then you combine pieces together to create beautiful, longer sections of music
Right.
until eventually you can create a four-part play made of all different soundtracks that come together into one big gestalt. And you know that is that's the mentality I'm hoping to impart on people is to take music that serious. Their clients are. The clients don't, you know, you don't get to blame the playlist. You know, you're responsible for that. If you pluck it off of Spotify or wherever you get it from, you are responsible for what's on that. So sit through it, understand it, know whether or not every track in there is good. You know, if you didn't listen to that that John Hopkins psilocybin playlist, you know, and then you present it to your client, don't be surprised when they're upset that it's full of classical music and you weren't quite sure.
Right.
You know, you have to sit through and understand these things before you administer them, just the same way that you do with psychedelics. You should know your psychedelics, you should understand them. You should understand not just serving techniques, but you should understand counseling. And then before you do that, you really integrate it into your experience and start to serve that for others. And music is the same way. Digest it multiple times, understand its qualities and traits, and then learn how to administer it. It's an important responsibility.
100% agree. I mean, it's such an important part of the DJ skill set is like knowing the music that you're playing. And I love what you just said. it resonates to me so well because even before I was DJing, like just as a young kid, music to me was that emotional outlet. Like it was the way that I could connect with emotion because I didn't have the tools that I have now, or the vocabulary, or the somatic awareness to tap into my emotional state. I just had all these emotions, and I knew that if I played this fucking song, it was going to tap into that. It was going to magnify it. Or other songs that would like soothe that, make it a little bit better, a little bit more digestible. And I've always loved that about music. And I've always loved that feeling of listening to a song and knowing, not even thinking, but knowing, oh, you know what would go really good with this is this other song.
Mhm.
Right. And so it's like things
Mhm.
like what you talk about in the book with the harmonic mixing, were so validating for me when I started to use those tools, because I was like, oh, wait, like I'm sort of doing that
Yeah.
before. This is just
Uh-huh.
at a much higher level. And I don't have to
Yeah.
sit here and learn the piano and like, sit there and find the key. It's great to have that technology, um, and that accessibility. I know you mentioned some of the dangers or the challenges of accessibility. I also appreciate where we're at, that we have things like mixed and key where you can tell the key of music, so you can kind of extend that journey or that arc like you talk about in the book. Or even, I mean, gosh, like I'm just totally nerding out here for the audience, but so, forgive me, but like, the music that I love, it used to take 6 months to a year or more to find that song. You'd have to hunt down the track lists on, some message board, and then like, try to track down these white label unreleased tracks that these DJs were playing that might come out in a year. They might never come out. And maybe you could, pay like 50 or $60 for one record to get it shipped from England, from a
Uh-huh.
record pool that the DJs were getting it from. But most
Yeah.
of the time you never would find it. And now to be there and be like, Shazam, what the hell is this song? Put it in a
Uh,
Spotify playlist for later, and be able to like, springboard that into more exploration or more discovery of that artist or that genre or just that sound. To me, it's just such a beautiful, beautiful thing.
yeah. Well, listen, that's why people who are saying DJing's this or that, if you listen to music, you're DJing in some capacity.
Hmm.
I'm not just talking again about like two turntables and a pair of headphones. It's really pairing music to life experiences. And so if you're listening to music, you're hunting around, even if you're on Spotify, you're looking for that cool music to listen to on your way to work. That's DJing. That's why it's an ancient art form of selecting music. In a recent panel that I sat on at a conference here in Los Angeles, I spoke about that, which is, I think they were talking a lot about shamans and spirituality, but I stepped in and I just said, shamans are DJs.
Yeah.
And that might be, like a clutch the pearls moment for saying that, but shamans are DJs. They're trained in understanding what particular pieces of music do, how it changes them and changes others, what it opens up, what it helps access. And they've learned this through experimentation over hundreds or thousands of years and passed these songs down. When you sit with a shaman, at least the ones I sit with, they're loaded with tracks. They show up with a record box full of material. And instead of having, a computer program or a playlist or turntables or whatever, they're showing up with their voice or with their instruments and they're playing those songs which someone else told them really work really well with this medicine at this time for these reasons.
Right.
And that's what I'm doing, and that's what others that I know are doing, is we're finding selections of music that we know work really well for creating particular openings, for helping close things up, for bringing emotions or memories to the surface. I'm doing that in sessions and outside of sessions. To me, that's DJing. And I think that everyone, even people who are listening to this, they're doing DJing in some capacity. And the only people that aren't are ones that literally don't listen to music. But everyone else, the second you're choosing a piece of music for a reason, that is DJing at its most basic, and then go from that point and expand outward. Forget about the technical stuff. Just
Yeah.
really get into understanding the sound and how it has an impact.
Such a great segue into something that I wanted to go deeper into with you, which is attunement. Like when you are in session with someone, how do you determine like when something isn't working, or vice versa when it is working, and to kind of stay in that space? What are ways that one could develop and refine that soft skill, I guess, and it's not like a hard skill, but that attunement, how does that happen?
I look at myself as a tuning fork. That's one that I've been running with a lot lately. And so I'm one of those, one end of the tuning fork, the client's the other. And the room also has an impact on that. And I pay attention first to how the music makes me feel before I administer it. So I bought this week, I don't even know, probably a few albums. My wife is listening to those albums. We share a Bandcamp. She goes through and helps sort through stuff too. And she listens to those, how it helps her feel, and then where she thinks it'll work in her ketamine sessions with her clients. And I'm doing that all the time. So it starts there, is understanding how it makes me feel, so that when I bring that into the session, I can get a feel for that as it's happening. I can empathize with the client experience. I can get out of my own, put myself in the client's experience as best as possible. I can never fully know what's going on, but I do know that prior to the medicine, this is how it made me feel. These are the emotions it brought up. These are the memories it brought up, the visuals that I had. And then as the client is journeying, I'm watching their reactions, and their reactions are is their tuning fork, and they're vibrating, which is causing a vibration in me. As I can see the reaction happening to them, it's happening to me, and I'm pairing that with my understanding of what the piece of music can do, and then I'm watching it as it's happening. Where it gets really challenging is when the client sits totally still
Right. That's
and
where I was
doesn't
going with this.
give you anything at all to work with. And when I first started doing psychedelic therapy work, especially in like I'd say the first 2, 3 to 5 sessions, there's so much projection that goes on. The client's laying there, there's no reaction. And before I ever got grounded in doing this, it was like, oh my God, what's going on? Is this working? Is it not? I don't know. They're not reacting. Are they enjoying this? Are they not? There was all these questions, and of course I would learn about, what projection is and know that from my other work. But just learning about that and not projecting into the client experience and going into fantasy because we don't genuinely know what's going on. But what we use is how we're vibrating to understand in some capacity how the client's vibrating. And so if they're not giving me any external stimulus to work with, I then have to gauge that in myself and my understanding of the music, and then take that and make my next best selection based on how I'm vibrating, how the room feels, what's going on. And then at levels that I can't put a finger on, there's that spiritual realm. And so if I'm losing my ability to use myself as that tuning fork, then there's just expanding into the spiritual space of understanding that there's something greater going on that I can feel, a felt sense in the room, and having a trust that since I'm making space for the client to contribute, and though they're not giving me very much, I'm making space for their spiritual transpersonal space to contribute. That who and what they're bringing with them, their otherworldly stuff that I can't see, I allow that to come through. I ask for that to come through and help me make the next best selection. And I listen for that intuition as it's happening. And then I wait for that moment to go, no, no, this is going to be the better choice. I'll have, yeah, I work in a 4 deck system, so I'll have multiple selections ready, and then I'll let the moment decide based on what I'm getting. And if I'm not getting that, I'm getting it from somewhere else. Then I'm tapping into that and I'm going, I trust that this selection is going to be best based on my understanding, the moment, how it feels, what's going on, what it smells like in the room, and what the spiritual capacity is bringing, and what that's inspiring within me. There's been many times where I'll make a selection and I'll say, wow, that's a fascinating one to make. And I'll get this little intuition that it was almost like an inspiration, which means spirit, that came through and just helped me go, that's the one. And I think it's a mixture between both. I ride the balance where I don't put too much emphasis on spirit being the selector, and I also don't put all of the onus on myself so that I get bound up and paralyzed and having to make the best decision. I find that balance between the two. That's especially when the client is not giving off very much. And then for the ones that are giving off a lot, it's so much easier to really see what the music is doing because it's happening right there. The music is having a very powerful impact, and then I can gauge that. But even in that process, I'm still connected to multiple spaces inside myself and otherworldly that are helping select things as we're going.
Mm. It's such a fascinating topic for me, especially from my background with holotropic breathwork, because in that world, in that setting, when the client says this music sucks, or I hate this music, or please change this, or has a really strong emotional reaction, there's no changing it. Like, it's always infallibly, I'm glad it's working for you. Trust what the inner healer is like why you're having this experience. Like, it's an invitation for curiosity. It's an invitation to ask, where have I felt this way before? Or can I sit with this discomfort or whatever's happening? And yet that's just one sort of setting for expanded states. Like, I had this conversation recently with Eric Sinek from Polaris,
Yeah, I know Eric. He's great.
yeah, and we
Yeah.
talked about it because I was in one of their music trainings, and they were talking about like when it's trauma informed to change the music in a session. And I'm like, oh, this is such an interesting, like, nuanced topic, because
Hmm.
I do really believe in that holotropic principle of like, like, yeah, I've been uncomfortable, in my own sessions, and like, what's that bringing up for me? Like, there's such a opportunity to get curious and to like go a little bit deeper and sit with what's coming up. And yet that isn't always the trauma informed sort of decision. So like having that
Yeah.
discernment, or like making that call in the moment, you know.
Yeah, well, again, that gets back to understanding the medicine, understanding the therapeutic capacity of the client, understanding the alliance, understanding your music, being very deeply dialed into these things. And then there's differing opinions across the board. I mean, there's lineages that have been going on for thousands of years. There's some lineages in Shipibo traditions. There's certain ones here in Los Angeles. They sing and they dance and they do all different types of things. And then I go to the ones that I attend are very traditional. They're very simple. There isn't all that kind of distraction. There's different thoughts. I mean, look at Bill Richards saying in that recent interview for Michael Pollan's podcast group, he said, don't DJ, that's
Yeah,
like the old, it's the old man in, just it's the old practitioner waving, in the jungle saying, no, you don't do that, you do this. And then the other tribe is
yeah,
going, no, you don't do that, you do this.
right.
So everybody's got a different take on how and how it should be handled. I do think that if we don't want to wind up in the boilerplate therapy realm that destroyed psychotherapy and addiction treatment, right? That boilerplate, like it has to be this way. If we
Mm.
don't want to be stuck in that, then we do need to make space for the moment to tell us what needs to happen. And if a client is having such a difficult time, I do think that it's good to prepare them during orientation, during prep sessions, letting them know that the music is there for that capacity, to reach out if there's anything challenging, to assist in guiding them through what is coming up if possible, to help them have awareness of whatever emotion that feeling that music is bringing up, and also being able to be humble enough to admit that you have shitty music and that you selected a track that for that particular person isn't good. You can cook something and put the wrong ingredient in, and everyone in the room likes it except for that one person. It just doesn't work for their palette.
Right.
And so I think being really rigid becomes too much like the shamanic realms, which are very kind of hands off, the spirit's happening, I'm not involved, this is just how it's going to go, and that's it. And there's space for that. Certain people need that kind of approach. Whereas others, you can say, all right, is it really not working? It's just not working for me. All right, great. Better to just switch, do a nice fade into something beautiful and switch off into something else and chalk it off, lick your wounds. Yeah, listen, that track isn't for everybody. I just discovered this is the person that it's not for.
Mm.
And so don't play it for that type of person. That doesn't mean you don't have to do it again, but definitely go back and review the piece of music. Ask the client later, what didn't work? And they may say, you know what, it was just agitating. It was some irritating noise in it. There was something that was wrong in it. And then go and listen to it from their perspective and be humble enough to go, all right, I could see that. But for some people, no, I could see it would work, but I could see how for a client like that, it wouldn't work. And so be open to the possibility of changing in the moment to meet the client where they're at is one of the basic tenements of counseling, and let the client show you where they need to go, but but guide the session as well and do your best to be able to let the client take the day off and not have to direct the music the entire time. But if they're having a particular moment, then yeah, that might be a moment where you need to reconsider a selection.
Yeah. Well, and what I'm hearing is there's a lot that happens in the preparation and outside of that actual ceremony experience that is helping to like lay the groundwork for the container that you're co-creating, not only with you, the client, but with the music as well. And yeah, like not music is so subjective. It's okay if you or me or somebody else isn't everybody's cup of tea. There's lots of other people that they might be more satisfied working with, and that's okay. And also, like what you're saying is have the awareness to be able to like look inside and say like, well, why do I feel like I need to play this? Like, is it because I really like this song is the shit right now? Like, like, and I have to play it. Is there something within me that like I need to get out of my own way and kind of like be more attuned to spirit, to the energy, to the client, to the experience? I don't know. To me, there's an invitation in there as well.
Yeah. Well, that's being an opening DJ,
Mm.
which is one of the greatest arguments in DJing is like, there's nothing worse than walking into a club or an experience, a party or wedding, and the opening DJ is playing music that should be played at the peak. And this is so common because DJs there's so few gigs available. So if you're a new and up and coming DJ, you've got all your greatest tracks, and then you get given opening slots. You don't want to play all these tracks that you never play. You want to play these tracks that you're always playing at home and that are your greatest pieces. But guess what? Those belong at 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. or midnight. And so you want to play appropriate for the time. And, to do that, you need to be humble and you need to say, this isn't about what I need to play right now. This is about what the moment needs. And that's the importance of understanding the stages of each medicine, is that first stage is very different for different medicines. And so you're going to want to understand what you need to play. And so I do write about that, which is like, changing out. It's like swapping the music in a film. It's playing happy music when Darth Vader walks in, ruins Darth Vader. Playing peak music during the onset ruins the onset.
Right.
Playing peak music during the opening of a club set is going to ruin the opening. It's not going to warm the room up. So you do have to understand yourself. You do need to be humble to that and know what the moment needs. And you can be a tuning fork for that, but you do need to be able to make, have a wide enough selection and understanding to make those moments. So
I feel so seen right now because, like even when I was pursuing professional DJing, like I always
mhm,
wanted to be the opening DJ. I feel very comfortable in that space, and like because it's not about me, it's about the music and it's about the room and it's about the experience. Like I'm willing to step aside from that spotlight to to have that moment where the music is like you're saying supporting the set and setting. So yeah, I mean I see that a lot. I do one of the things that I do now, and I have been doing for the last few years, is mix sets for other facilitators, the folks like we were talking about in the earlier on in the conversation, that like it's not their zone of genius, or they just don't have time to do this, because it does, like we're talking about, it does take some time and some skill and some learning. um and so it's much easier for them to just say, here's my playlist, mix this for me, and I want this great experience, right? And sometimes when, how can I say this, there are times when somebody gives me a playlist and I'm like mixing it and I'm like, okay, like I wouldn't put these songs together, but this is what you want. You've clearly are feel very strongly about it. Great. I'm just going to make this mix, these transitions the best that I can possibly make them, right? There's other times where people are like, but I really want to I really want this song. And I'm like, this is a great song. I love this song. But you're trying to shoehorn it in a
mhm,
place where it doesn't fit. And like,
mhm,
save this for the next mix. Like, save this for something where it fits better. And I'm like trying to teach them or get the idea that like sometimes it's like putting together a puzzle, and like you might have the greatest puzzle piece, it's the most interesting puzzle piece, but it just doesn't fit where you're trying to smash it in to the
mhm.
the surrounding, area. And like, just save it for something else. Like, you don't have to make this particular set perfect. You don't have to use all of your favorite songs. Like, I like the analogy you used earlier about the cooking, right? Like, you can have
Mhm.
a bunch of ingredients that you love. If you throw them all together at once, it's going to taste like shit.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Especially if you're trying to apply one ingredient to something that it doesn't belong in.
Right, right.
You're like, I just really love this ingredient. I'm going to stick it in this cake and it's going to make it taste crappy. It just doesn't belong in there. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's tough, man. I applaud you for helping people create more flowing mixes, more technical mixes. This is the point of putting out the DJ mixes the way that I did, was that I wanted to show people the possibility of not just having playlists that start and stop constantly throughout, or that get cut off at certain points,
Right.
or that get mashed together because the crossfader option in whatever app you're using just doesn't do a good job. There is a way to lay these things out so that it offers a clean and continuous experience and doesn't disrupt. And I wanted to try to give people an idea of that. Unfortunately, what's happened, and I knew this would occur, is that people have run off and taken the track listings from my mix protocols, turned them into Spotify playlists. They're missing tracks because there's certain tracks that aren't on there, or that they just don't mix well together. And then people are using that instead of using the actual, recordings, because the
Right.
recordings are laid out so much more smoothly. They're mastered
Yep.
to play appropriately during the sessions. So I give you credit for helping people do that. Um, I do think that they can learn that even in the little apps that they're using. And it's important that they do that, because in learning how to actually do what you're doing for them, they're listening to their music even more.
Yeah.
Each one of those tracks, as they're skimming and going and then playing around with them, all of that is another way for them to get to know their music even more.
Yeah.
As they put the pieces of the puzzle together, they're learning more and more about each piece. And so I think they're missing an opportunity to kind of craft something that will help hone their skills even more. But yes, limited on time. But we all have to find time for everything. Reading our therapy books is important. Our psychedelic therapy books are important. Our music, all these things need to be studied and digested often for us to do our work correctly.
I mean, selfishly for me, it's been great because it's helped me discover so much more music. Like
Yes.
somebody will give me a playlist, and I'm like, oh my God, like this one song or these two songs, like I fucking love this. Like I'm gonna put this aside and use it in my next, session.
Yeah.
And I've discovered so much great music through that process. And like you're saying, it's helped me get better at what I do, right? Because like
Hmm.
there's I was trying to explain this to someone recently where they were like, I really want to hire you for this, but your price is too high. And I'm like, I totally get it. Like I'm a boutique like kind of experience. And if you could find somebody on Fiverr for probably a lot
Hmm.
cheaper, but it's not going to sound as good. They don't know,
No.
they've, how many psychedelic sessions have they been in, or like, how long have they been DJing? Um, but yeah, it's but because the average like facilitator, say for breath work, where typically are using pre-recorded mixes, right? um they might do one or two, and I've done like 60 in the last 3 years. Like there's going to be a gap there in like the quality or the experience, or just like you're saying, like little things that I can put in there to enhance the experience for the listener, for the participant, where I'm mixing little bits of like ear candy that I can throw in
Hmm.
there to not detract from the experience, but to enhance it. um
That's right.
and every once in a while, like I'll have people in my breathwork sessions that are like, oh my God, like that music was so great. Can I get a copy of the playlist? And I'm like, well, I have the Spotify version where you can listen to the tracks. It's not going to sound exactly the same. Like this is for our container. This is for
Yeah.
our experience. But you could listen to the Spotify version and get like 70%, but it's not going to be exactly the same.
Yeah, you're an old school DJ. So I'm the same way. This book was hard because I'm so used to covering my records from just the 90s and all my friends in New York,
Yep,
everyone's looking at each other's records trying to steal what
totally.
the piece is because every piece of music was so hard to find back then. And it's even, thanks to Shazam, much easier now, but
Hmm.
it's still very difficult to find a lot of stuff. And so people, they come in. I mean, we were hanging out upstairs listening to music, and a track was played. I said, "What is that?" And my friend Joe, she was like, "What was what?" I was like, "What's that track?" She was like, "Oh, I don't know. It's this one." It's like nobody wants to give up the goods. But with this book, I realized, it is about spreading the message and helping people understand and I would prefer for them to sit through or at least listen to what transitions sound like. But I,
Yes.
I also get it that people are going to digest music the way that they're going to do it. And the vast majority of people now are doing that through Spotify. The hope is that we can encourage them to know their music and musicians more and to actually buy their music outside of Spotify because Spotify is just so toxic in so many ways. And unfortunately, I can hope that for people, but the vast majority of folks are just still going to go there. They're going to go, can I get a play? You have a Spotify playlist? Because that's just so easy for them.
Yeah.
And they could just listen to the tracks in there, but they're going to lose all the transitions and the building and the arc of it all. It's just, it's different. Yeah. Well, that's traditional DJing right there. It is really, it's so fascinating because we're the biggest supporters of music, but in the same, we're as DJs, kind of everything's proprietary. It's like, I found it, it's my weapon because it has that much power. It's like when I drop this is going to be the one that everyone's going to go, what is that? And because it has such a powerful impact. And so, yeah, it's, having to shed those old traditions to step into the space has been, it's been helpful. My colleague up in Santa Cruz, he had said it recently to me when I said, "Yeah, man, my playlists, my track listings are showing up as playlists on Spotify." He's like, "Yeah, but it's all about spreading the message, and
Right.
And I told myself that many times as I was stepping into the book was, just share, open it up, let it go. And then by doing that, I let go of some of the more powerful pieces. And then they wound up on a research project over in the UK. They were looking for a particular piece of music right nearing the peak of the psilocybin experience, and they were really stuck at this one level. And I said, yeah, use these two pieces of music, and they slotted them in, and they said that that's some of the they got the feedback from their participants was that was the peak moment
Mm,
for them,
how
that those
cool.
pieces of music, and those were ones I held very close to my heart because of how powerful they are in sessions. I even wrote about them in the book as being so powerful that they will help clients break through. And then just to let it go, then it wound up in a research project, and more people are now buying that piece of music, which then fuels this. So I've had to loosen up, man, and let go of the old school way of doing things. But I have a couple of gems that I don't let go of,
Yeah.
that I hold close to the chest, just simply because, it's fine. But do I need to share them more over time? Probably, and I will.
Would you feel comfortable sharing the two pieces of music that you just talked about?
Yeah. So the two that I referred to in the book that are really powerful, Ed Harrison's "Out," the poem remix on the Neo Tokyo remix, and another one that's really strong is Malibu's "Iliad," and that's off of the Places of Pity album. And both of those are actually written in the same key. And so they are both really strong. And they're ambient tracks, but they come with such incredible arcs, and they're very strong. They trigger a lot of sublimation. So the clients will go into a remembering state, usually causes huge breakthroughs, lots of tears will come out, and that will create openings of all kinds. So those are powerful pieces of music. I wrote once about the use of the intergalactic, which one is that? Intergalactic Space Federation by Junkie XL. I used that one in a session, and that was so powerful. But that one, you got to mix out at the end because the end gets a little bit strong. So there's, pieces of music of all different types that I've, opened up and shared, and people are using in sessions and report back to me and tell me that it worked out well. So
What a cool thing to get to just be immersed in all the time, like,
yeah.
I mean, obviously we're geeking out together.
Uh-huh.
But I love it. Um
Yeah, sure.
so I feel like we could keep talking about this topic, but I did want to
Yeah,
tangent a little bit into something
go for
else
it.
that I thought was curious from the book. And this was something that you had put in the book from psychedelic researcher Myron Stolaroff.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to read the quote and then maybe we could talk a little bit more about it. The most infallible guide to shadow material is our uncomfortable feelings. Many do not like to use low doses because these feelings come to the surface. Rather than experience them, they use larger doses to transcend them. But these uncomfortable feelings are precisely what we must resolve to free ourselves from the shadow, gain strength and energy, and function more comfortably and competently in the world. By using smaller amounts and being willing to focus our full attention on whatever feelings arise and breathe through them, we find that these feelings eventually dissolve, often with fresh insight and understanding of our personal dynamics. The release of such material permits an expansion of awareness and energy. If we work persistently to clear away repressed areas, we can enter the same sublime states that are available with larger doses with an important additional gain. Having resolved our uncomfortable feelings, we are in a much better position to maintain a high state of clarity and functioning in day to day life.
How beautifully said.
I freaking love that.
It's
And
amazing.
yes. And so how does that sort of philosophy impact your work with clients as far as the dosage, and maybe even your own personal work?
Thanks so much for asking about something other than music. Writing this book has led to, sorry, I'm closing the window. Um, yeah, people just obviously ask so much about the music, but there's so much more to the book than that. The book is not just that. It's a protocol about serving techniques, It's about
100%.
preparation.
Yeah.
It's about counselor self-care, and there my whole protocol on like how to actually deliver this is in there. You can take this and actually go and do it. I recommend that you get training, but you can use this protocol and add it to other protocols. And part of that is understanding the medicines themselves and understand dosing. The thing that I've noticed over the years of doing this now is clients arrive to session going like, I want an ego death. I read about it in this article, and I heard 5 grams. Are we doing 5 grams? And I'm like, what is it about 5 grams that's so exciting? Well, I heard ego death is the way to do this. And so I've spoken to the shamans that I've worked with about this, and we've had our laugh with it because it's it's a trend. It's so trendy to to overdose people on psychedelics.
Mm.
It's the only medicine that I've seen where people actually celebrate the overdose. Slamming people with an excessive amount of medicine to put them in a state where they're completely confused. What's your reason for doing that? How did you assess that the client needed to have a complete and total breakdown of their ego structure to reset them back to a childlike state so that they then have to be, rebirthed back into existence? Where's the backing that says that, you need to have the client not be able to remember the session at all, for them to come up from that and go, what happened? And then in the integration sessions, they struggle to integrate it because they can't even remember it. And they're trying to integrate, that's like trying to integrate a surgery when the propofol took you out and you're trying to understand something that you weren't present for at all. And you're struggling. What happened? I wish I could remember. And the 5 gram, thing is, it sells papers. It's really good for getting people to read more things and to come into psychedelics. Wow. I mean, do you want to read about that soft 2 gram dose that just changed a person's life because they sat there and they were uncomfortable and they talked to you the whole time about their feelings? That doesn't really sell. It sells for some people. What sells these days is, I took, 5 grams and interacted with Christ, who gave me the message of the universe. That drives people. That brings people in, and then they show up during, the screening or introduction calls saying that that's what they want, but they don't even know why. And then when they work with myself or someone else, and then they lose complete capacity and they can't remember their journeys, then they're pissed off that they can't integrate it because there's just simply nothing left to be able to make sense of. Now, how I help them integrate those high doses is that I say, you don't need to be present for surgery to work, right? You're getting out of the way. The subconscious and unconscious material is flowing forward. You're not present for that. It did its work without you being present there, but there is something important about being able to grasp understanding. And that's where the shamans early on, the ones that I at least consult with, they had said is like, you want to, like all medicine, is find the right dose for that person. You want to get them into the perfect spot. If you can do that, you've succeeded. They're able to get a big enough experience to where they loosen up their boundaries and their defenses, but they're not so far gone that they can't remember, that they're able to actually extract things and integrate them. And it's hard to do that when they're just coming back totally confused. And so in certain cases, there are clients that are going to require that. And in most cases, especially first-time clients, I think the safer route for people to do, and I recommend this in the book, is that if you're going to be serving medicine, is to do a titrated dosing system where you provide a good solid dose based on body weight. Or I have some colleagues that do, what's the one with the weight, where you're doing the weights with your hands? Forgot what it's called. But basically, it's like I just start with body weight, personal experience, what they're coming in with, what's the mindset for the day, and then I check with them. I say, based on your body weight and your experience, and you seem a little nervous, how about we start with like 2 grams? And they'll say, oh, okay, that feels good. Or they'll say, no, I want a little more than that. My starting dose usually is around this point. So we'll start there. And then during that first hour, you get to assess really their sensitivity. I mean, does it kick in within 5 minutes or 10 minutes? Are they crying within 10 or 15 minutes? Or is it taking 35 or 40 minutes to see any movement at all? Is the client, moving around a lot? Are they scratching? What are they doing that's giving you an assessment of the effect of that first dose? And then when you get to that first hour, that's why I build in a bathroom break at 55 minutes, is because most clients within that first hour have to use the bathroom by that time. I saw that in my first 20 or 30 sessions. I was like, all of these clients are going to the bathroom at almost the same time. So I said, I'm going to just build in a bathroom break, because even the ones that weren't asking to go to the bathroom, when I started to check in at that point, they'd say, yeah, I've needed to go for a while. And they're not even getting up. So most people around 50 to 55 minutes needed to use the bathroom. It was also a good time to help clients get up, assess if they needed the bathroom, assess where they were at with the medicine, if it was a strong enough dose, if they needed to go further. The bathroom break was a good opportunity for them to go and, get up, get their blood moving, come back and say, it wasn't enough, I need more. And at that hour mark, as long as you get that booster in within about 60 to 75 minutes, it's going to totally strengthen the experience. It doesn't even extend the duration. It goes right after the strength of it. And so you can help them get into that state while giving them some time to ease into the experience on a lower dose, to deal with some of the emotions that they would be completely blasted through with an ego death dose. And so it's better for them to just take time to understand themselves at those levels, to work with the material that's emerging, and that even if they take a booster, it takes about 30 minutes or so for that booster to kick in. So 90 minutes of that first dose is where they're getting to deal with a lot of the emotions that they don't ever want to really look at. And those lower doses brings that to the surface. And that's what Stolaroff wrote about, is that it's there. You don't want to blast them through that. Then they just come out the other end having not really dealt with some of those emotions or the material that can come up on lower doses. Then that booster dose helps you knock them into a state that's closer to the ego death or in the ego death state. So you're getting kind of the best of both worlds while respecting the need for the client to address some of the stuff that comes up at those lower areas. And so I do think that's a safer way to do it as well, to understand the sensitivity of your client, to give them an opportunity to contribute to whether or not they need a booster dose, and yeah. And so I think I answered that there.
And you answered it great. And I love that you went so in depth into it, because I can't agree more. I mean, yeah, I'm constantly trying to get people to do a little bit less, at least be open to the idea, just because my own experience has been exactly that like, if I can be more present with the experience, which is really hard to do when you go over a certain threshold of any sort of medicine, the experience becomes more therapeutic. I get more out of it. It's easier for me to integrate. And I love your analogy of like trying to integrate surgery when you've been under anesthesia. That is a very apt description of what happens to a lot of people. And then they wonder why they're back in another ceremony in like 3 to 6 months, dealing with the same problems or the same challenges or the same, trying to change the same things. Well, I'm back here again because the thing came back and I can't figure out how to change it or to integrate it. And the only sort of tool or like method that they have is like going back and trying to get blown out again. That's not doing anything for their nervous system. That's not doing anything for the actual integration of the medicines. And yeah, I went through this experience myself where, not to get super woo, but the mushrooms told me, stop taking so much. Like, you're good. Like, you can stop taking so much. And I didn't listen the next time. And I got my ass handed to me by like doses that would I'm like, I've taken more than this. Like, why am I fucking getting put through the ringer? And then it was like, oh yeah, the medicine told you to stop taking so much. And so I listened. And all of a sudden I was getting more out of this session, going deeper on a lower dose because I was more present, because I could stay with my breath, because I could stay in my body, than I was just like trying to blast off as, as high and as far as I could. And it's become like a hill that I'll die on of like, yes, there's a real good reason to do this, to not just try to like take more than you need, as you put it. So I really appreciate you bringing that in.
You can always take more, you can't take less.
Absolutely.
And you don't even need to take more. My Saturday session was a third time client coming in. The first time he took 5.5 grams, blew him away. The second time he came in going, oh man, and he only needed 3.5 grams to get that far. This time he came in and he had an expectation he was going to connect with spirit and have this big, gigantic experience. And we boosted him up to 5 grams. He got in there and he had almost no psychedelic effect, but it was all somatic, all body. And the at that point he needed to get out of his intellect and into his body. It's
Yeah.
so interesting how these medicines work. And each journey is different. You're bringing in different material. You don't know what you're going to be dealing with. And I do think it's good to at least give space for the easing into an experience without doing what some of my friends do, where they're like, I don't like low doses. They feel uncomfortable. And I'm like, exactly,
Right. Exactly. Yeah, that's the point.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like you don't need to be so grossly uncomfortable, but if you're uncomfortable because it's bringing to the surface material you don't want to deal with and you just want to go commune with God, then yeah, take your 5 grams. But if you're there to try to work on anxiety, depression, check out some of your neurotic patterns and stuff, the lower doses are going to help you be able to face that material with some type of conscious mentality associated with it.
I remember a very early LSD experience, and I wish I would have. There's a part of me that wishes that I would have gotten this message the first time it was presented to me, but I'm going to be really honest, I did not. I spent many years ignoring it before coming back to it, but I had this experience on LSD where it felt like complete and total enlightenment. Like I had all the secrets of the universe. I knew exactly what was going on, and the overwhelming experience through that was, oh, this is why it takes practitioners of meditation or like Buddhist monks or whatever, their entire life or lifetimes to get to this level without drugs. It felt like that moment in the Truman Show when he's on the elevator and the door opens and he sees like
Yeah.
another floor, like another reality, and then the door closes. Like I literally couldn't hang out there for more than maybe even a few milliseconds. In the trip, it felt like maybe a couple minutes, but literally my body, my consciousness, my somatic experience couldn't hold that for much longer than like the finger snap, right? And it didn't walk away with going, oh, I got to get back there again. It was like, oh, this is why it takes time. This is why when they say, the one ayahuasca ceremony is like 5 years of therapy, well, maybe there's a reason why it's taking you 5 years to like actually process this stuff, right? So I really do think that, just like you're saying, like, yeah, like the lower doses are uncomfortable. Like, what would happen if you were open to that? What would happen if you were curious enough and resourced enough to like be with that experience and not just have this one dimension of the psychedelic experience where you're overriding all that stuff to get into a liminal or subliminal space? Like that stuff is available to you on lower doses and even without medicine at all, but you got to be resourced and you got to put the work in to deal with that uncomfortable shit so that you can like actually hold those experiences. And that's why yes, I love that you put in the book about like how to take care of yourself, and like you talk about your meditation practice and like the things that you're doing for self-care that help you be better at what you're doing for other people and in your work.
Yeah, I think that's what's disappointing to some people about the book is that it also doesn't just sit there and speak constantly about music. I go into the protocols and what I do to prepare on journey day and how specific it all gets and all the detailed little things you need. And I think all of that's, absolutely essential if you're going to be sitting around trying to step into this type of work, is understand that there's so much more to it than just music.
Yeah.
That this is about psychedelic DJs being therapists and counselors and musicians and offering and making sure that people are getting a comprehensive view into what this looks like. So there's the reason why, by the way, psycholytic work is low dose,
Yeah.
right? That's psychedelics with talk therapy is, once you give it too high of a dose, it's very difficult for a person to take anything away from it.
That's right.
So low doses are really important. Take your time with your clients. Even if you think you know your client, they're coming back in for a second round, go slow. Like take your time with them, because with that client that I worked with on Saturday, his second one, he came in and he needed a significantly less amount on his second journey. And we thought he was going to need so much more because he took 5.5 or so on his first journey. And he came in and he needed less. And that happens often. So again, the boilerplate thing is just not safe to do in this work.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sure that this might come as a surprise for somebody listening to this, for the amount that we've talked about music on this podcast. But like, I'm glad that you appreciated bringing in another element, because I feel like we could do a total, like a second podcast and not talk about music at all. There were
Yeah.
things in the book that, talking about facilitator burnout, talking about like your preparation and like how you take care of yourself, that are really fascinating to me. And I think for this, for the audience of this podcast, because really it's not just about the experience. It's about like, how are you integrating it? Like how is this changing your life? Like we can, we can have these experiences, you can have these huge blowout, and you might remember some of it, you might not. And I do agree with you that the surgery is having an effect and an impact, whether you remember it or not. But also, the more that you remember, the more you can work with, the more you can integrate, the more I think transformation can occur. There's more potential for that active experience. So, yeah, I mean, whenever you're ready, we can just set the music aside and do another podcast and talk about it, because I really do appreciate that about the book, that I feel like someone could pick up this book and understand how to run a good uh ceremony, a good therapeutic session for someone, without any prior knowledge. Now, like you said,
Mhm.
and I do agree with it, like go get some training, don't just rely strictly on the book. But there's like such great best practices for setting up the session in the book, as well as like how to take care of yourself as a facilitator. And it's very in depth, from the preparation and the screening process to how you're integrating with the client, and like what that might look like, and bringing in different modalities or different angles to that integration process. And I think it does a really good job of distilling a very broad um, job and experience of psychedelic therapy, and like what that can look like in a very grounded and like best practice way.
Yeah, read the disclaimer at the beginning and then read the ethics section, which I put right at the beginning too. And both of those speak about the absolute importance of, yeah, this book is great and you could sit down and do something with it, but definitely get trained. And I
Yeah.
think the thing that I'm stressing on all the podcasts and some questions that often get asked is, let's say somebody wants to step into this work. What's the piece of advice that you have for them? My piece of advice is, at heart, I'm a therapy junkie. One of the greatest accomplishments in the book is my section on Gestalt therapy. Like I love Gestalt therapy. It's literally been the cornerstone of my counseling practice for over 15 years. The fact that I can include anything about Gestalt therapy and contribute to Gestalt therapy in some small way was a huge accomplishment. And so, learn a therapeutic modality that sings to you, whether it's Hakomi or whether it's psychodynamic or whether it's shamanism. Learn something that gives you the capacity to be able to sit and counsel a person through really powerful, life changing experiences to help people navigate through neurosis and trauma. learn how to do that, because otherwise you're going to learn how to serve medicine, which can be taught anywhere, which we're seeing. Everyone's got a training course now, right? And I've got clients doing weekend training courses in serving medicine, but then they get stuck on the therapy component. Early on, my wife got trained and came to me immediately and was like, I need to go and do a therapy training course. She did 5 years of Gestalt therapy training so that she could really get the understanding of how to sit with clients and guide them, not through the journey itself on journey day, but the really important screening, preparation, integration, and the counseling that occurs on journey day when the client's coming down and they want to talk. How do you hold space for that without just saying yes, yes, or no, or saying stupid things that can really screw them up? What helps with that is understanding ethics, getting on board with an ethics board, and studying therapy and counseling, and learning about somatic experiencing, and learning about Reichian work, and learning about Gestalt, and learning about CBT or reality therapy, or letting that be the structure of how you sit with clients in general, and then taking psychedelics and using them to help amplify the benefits of all of that therapeutic practice. That's so essential, which is why I wrote about that a whole bunch in there, is so that people don't just take this book and go out and start DJing for clients who are taking psychedelics, because man, you're going to wind up in a scenario very quickly where you don't know what to do or what to say. Someone's going to confess something to you and you're going to be completely frozen in what you should or shouldn't say. And that's where counseling and therapy training really comes in, is it helps you understand how to hold space for that, what to say, what not to say, and how not to screw things up for this person in a really sensitive space.
100%. We've talked about it a lot on the show, of like the sort of paradox of like how many people come out of these experiences with this message or this desire to serve the medicine, or like the medicine told me to start serving it. And like how when you do that, you're actually choosing like the hardest path. It's not the easiest path. It's not like, oh, I don't have to go to my job and deal with spreadsheets anymore, I can just serve medicine. Like you're actually choosing one of the hardest, most challenging paths for yourself, because it demands that you do so much work on yourself
Mm-hmm.
to be that vessel that can have that current moving through it to support your clients. And yeah, shout out to ethics. Shout
Mm-hmm.
out to are you familiar with The Ethics of Caring by Kylia Taylor?
Yeah, I think I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
specifically specifically about ethics of working with clients in expanded states of consciousness. So I
Oh,
always
cool.
recommend that book, because it's
Great.
fantastic, not only for how to work with your clients that are so sensitive in their expanded states to your own energetics and your own frequency, but like what's coming up in you as a facilitator, and like how to work with that. Like what happens when you start to feel jealous of the spiritual experience that your client's having, like if they're going deeper than you are, right? Or like where how to work with the money aspects. And she really breaks
Mm-hmm.
it down from like the different chakras, and like how the energy and the fears and the desires kind of interplay with those archetypal energies and chakra energies. So it's a great book. I always recommend it to
Wow,
people, um,
that's great.
for people that are interested in this work.
So cool, man. Yeah, I mean, for people who don't want to take a deep dive into a book, the ethics section I wrote is super conversational. It just sounds regular.
Mm,
And I did that throughout the book purposely, was that I did not want to make something that was long-winded or gets lost in big therapeutic jargon with big giant paragraphs that you have to read 5 times over. I have too many books that do that, and I wanted this to be more accessible. And this book is more accessible, and the ethics section that's in there is more accessible, specifically because there were going to be people reading it who are just journeyers and psychonauts. And I wanted them to be able to read that and understand ethics without having to take a giant deep dive into, ethics books and things that I've had to study for many years.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I can't recommend this book enough, for a variety of people, and their even if you're wanting just to have a better idea of how to like be a better sitter, like
Yeah.
be a better peer supporter, to your friends or within your community. And certainly if you are, serving medicine or, doing work in this space, how to bring in not only music, but some other best practices as well. And certainly from the music side of it, like how that can deepen and enrich and help to support what you're doing for your clients. And like you said, like, hey, even for those that are just, like we're all DJs, and like how to listen to music in a different way,
Mhm.
how to like kind of open yourself to that that dimension that of magic and mystery that music connects us to. So I really appreciate the book.
Thank you, man. I really hope that people can enjoy it for that same reason, to just understand that they're all DJing already and to fall more in love with music selection, music listening, things like that. So check it out. It's up on the psychedelicdj.com. And then my private practice is on integratedpsychedelics.com. You guys can find me there. And then, don't forget that the book also comes with there's two official released audio protocols. Both are 4-hour DJ mixes that were developed over hundreds of sessions. One of them's focused more on major chords called the light. The other one's more on minors called the shadow. And those are are an example of the book in action. And the book is an example of the mixes in action. And so they both go together. There's a QR code in the back of the book, but you can also find them on my website. And you can go through and get the track listing. There's a full interview on a strangely isolated place, which has Protocol One, and you can go and find them there and enjoy both of them. Use them in sessions. It's great.
Yeah. I I was listening to the second session earlier on SoundCloud. So
Oh yeah, that's
nice
it.
to
We're on
have
SoundCloud.
don't look it up on Spotify and like take that, like go and actually listen to the full protocol, right?
Yeah.
Get the full experience is my
Yeah, they're
recommendation.
being used in trainings right now. There's trainings that have them included, and they're being used in individual sessions. So you can just hit play on them and follow the instruction manual in the back of the book. There's on how to actually utilize it, how to use SoundCloud, how to set up a nice sound system for clients to experience. And it's not too overly technical. It's easy to understand. So I encourage people to explore and be curious about the process because music's so important.
Nice. Well, Matt, really appreciate you being here and appreciate your time, and obviously loved geeking out about the more obscure DJ piece with you. I don't know if like every other podcast has a DJ, like another DJ host that you could geek out in that way with. So hopefully that was okay for you too. And as a way of kind of closing, often I like to ask the guests like what their vital point is. So the name of the show, the vital point, comes from the Dzogchen Buddhist teaching about the three statements that strike the vital point, and that the entire um, breadth of Buddhism and like non-duality can be summed up in these three statements. So I'm wondering if there's a vital point that you might want to share that is either alive to you in your work, or that came up as a result of this conversation, or just what comes up as like something that you would want to share as a vital point with the audience.
Listen, listen, listen as much as you can. Listen to nature, listen to sound, listen to silence, listen to music, listen to your own music, the music that comes from within. Um, Listen to the inspiration all around. Listen to what the client needs. Um, yeah. Listen as much as you can. There's so much beautiful sound in the world. Let the frequencies and vibrations move you. And awareness. Awareness is so essential for so many things. Pay attention to what's going on inside and outside yourself. And allow psychedelics to help clear out the gunk. Let the music be the soundtrack for that. And yeah, and just keep coming back to self, ground, you know, good things like that. So I love this work, man. That's the simplest thing I can say is I love therapeutic work. I love DJing. I love psychedelics. I love everything that comes with this. all of the challenges and struggles, but all of the joys. And it's amazing work, and I can understand why so many people want to do this work. But move slowly and definitely learn, dedicate yourself to understanding this. This is one of the most powerful experiences a person can have. And the opportunity to sit with them, even just one more soul, is such an unbelievable honor, um, that, yeah, that is so humbling. So,
Thank you not only for sharing that, but what I noticed and I really appreciated is like how your energy and your own somatic experience changed, like just
mhm,
dropping into that question. Like, and
mhm,
I often go through that as well. Like I'm in podcast mode and then all of a sudden I have
mhm.
to do like a meditation or, sort of switch gears. So I really appreciate that you sort of allowed yourself to have that transition and to drop into a different space for that question.
Thanks, man. I did notice that in myself too. There's a seriousness that comes along with doing this work. And though there is this describing it, then there's the actual doing. And I think a lot of encouragement is, Matt, you need to go out and teach everybody this thing in your book. And I'm like, I just really love the work.
Mm.
The work is such an honor. It's so unbelievably reverent. So it's an amazing thing. And I want to stress that to everybody who's doing it, to take it incredibly serious, because it, for the client, it is that serious. And I do, and I'm looking forward to my journey tomorrow. I have another journey tomorrow. I have another one in a few days after that. So I just hold it in such a special place, and I'm glad I'm able to share my experience, just my take on it. And I hope that people are able to draw something from this and create their own protocols and their own ways of doing things. And I'm just so proud to be able to contribute in some capacity. So,
Mm.
yeah.
Matt, thank you so much for being here and thanks for doing what you do and putting that out in the world.
Yeah, man, definitely. Anyone who's interested in learning more, feel free to reach out through my website. And I just so your fans can understand here is I also have a low income fund for clients that can't access this work. A benefactor provided it, so anybody that needs extra assistance, they can always reach out, and the fund will cover it. So find me on my website and find me on SoundCloud and Instagram, all these fun places, and I'll be out there doing the work. So thanks for having me on your show. I appreciate it.
That's it for today's episode of The Vital Point. Huge thanks to Matt Xavier for joining us. You can find Matt at integratedpsychedelics.com or thepsychedelicdj.com. You can also find him on Instagram at Integrated Psychedelics or Matt Xavier DJ. Thanks so much to you for listening to the podcast. If this conversation supported your path, consider sharing it, leaving a review, a rating, whatever you can do to help others find the work. And for more practices and deeper integration, join me at Blue Magic Alchemy on School. That's skool.com/Blue Magic Alchemy. Until next time, stay with the practice and stay connected to what matters. Remember that regardless of the method that you're using, the vital point is to practice.